Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the economic challenges for Pakistan regarding the talks with the IMF, and as we all know that the budget is normally presented in the first week of June, and that is just around the corner, maybe a week away. But nothing has been done so far. Total dependence is on the talks with the IMF. There were two rounds and they were not very conclusive, but now staff level meeting will be held in Doha once again, and we hope that issues are sorted out. And again, two major demands: cutting in the expenditure as well as generating more revenue. This is the primary target. So most of these subsidies will be removed. As we all know that the petroleum prices have been up by ₹30 per litre, and that is one of the highest hit in one go. You're talking about almost 18% increase in the prices. Now to talk about this very important issue of IMF deal, we'll be talking to Dr. Shimail Daud. He is the former president of Rawalpindi Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much, Shimail Saab, for your time, sir. And we'll be talking to Dr. Khaqan Najeeb Saab. He's going to join us on Skype. He's the former advisor, Ministry of Finance. Dr. Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll also be talking to Shahbaz Rana Saab. He's an economic correspondent, Express Tribune. He's also going to join us on the telephone. But let me start off from you, Dr. Shimail. Two major areas which I was talking about earlier in the program. One is about the cutting in the expenditure and to a massive level. And the second is about generating more revenue. Now, sir, two mammoth tasks for the current government. And normally budget, as we all know, is always presented during the first week, and preparation is always done. Then you are issued with the economic survey of Pakistan and then the budget document. But sir, nothing has happened so far. It seems that this budget is totally dependent on the IMF deal. So your take on that?
Exactly, Faisal. I think from the beginning of this discussions that took place in US and now in Doha, it's very clear that the budget will have a shadow of the IMF program, and the stringent requirements by IMF need to be met. I mean, some of the preconditions we're already seeing, like the removal of subsidy. We are hearing about and reading about, there's a lot of discussion going on about the chances of the government raising the tariff in terms of the electricity. But other than that, I think right now the challenge for the upcoming budget, as you rightly pointed out, is going to be reducing the expenditures, the fiscal deficit. It needs to be reduced. I think the government was proposing about 3.7 trillion and in terms of the loss, and that was not being accepted by the IMF team. So I think there's a chances that there's going to be a revision in that. Obviously, there is a lot of stress upon increasing the revenues in terms of tax revenues, although there's a lot of hope because of the rising inflation, which is right now officially is about 13.5% or so, but we know that when we add up everything, it goes higher than this. With the rising of fuel prices, I think going next couple of weeks to a month, we're going to see a tremendous rise in this inflation. So under this, a lot of people are hoping that the government will not put more taxes in terms of direct taxation or put more pressure on the public. So in this pretext, in this context, I think a very challenging position for the government. Obviously, we already see that as of today, the trade, the import level, which was planned to be or was envisaged to be about $55 billion, had already crossed $65 billion.
That's exactly,
and it is going towards 70 and beyond. So I mean, the financing requirement is close to above $40 billion, close to $46 billion for the Pakistan government. So a lot of challenges for the finance team, as well as Mifta Saab and the minister and the government. So with this, I think that we just hope that it's about just balancing right now. It's like firefighting right now.
IMF also says that the prerequisites that were supposed to be followed or adopted were not by the previous government. So perhaps that is one of the reasons that they are being so stiff at the moment.
Faisal, when you look back the last 2 decades, it's the same story repeated by previous many governments, be it this one or the previous one or the previous one or the previous one. It's the same story. You get a little bit stability in terms of the macroeconomic stability. You get some fiscal space, you get some breathing space, and then you come back to ill discipline, and then you lose all the benefits. So you get a boost.
The concessions you'd never get.
And then you get a boom, and then you again lose all of that, and then you have to run back for your balance of payment. But the issue is, at this stage, we are reaching to that level where these deficits are going towards a more dangerous period. Why? Because not only our debt financing has increased, our interest payments have been on an average $1.4 billion or more for the last decades. On a yearly basis.
So 0.5% of the GDP.
Yes. So this is going on increasing, and we are, so let's say in terms of our exports touched slightly above $30 billion, $31 billion or so. So if you look at it in the last, let's say 2015.
But sir, are you talking about the volume or because of the rupee depreciation?
I'm just talking about the value terms. So if that has increased by a few percentage, our interest payments have gone more than 200%. In terms of what we are, and we are also borrowing more. So we're borrowing more in order to stay afloat, whereas the trade deficit has not gone, whereas our
highest ever
demand is going on because our population is growing. So these are the real structural issues, which you can be from any party, you can be from the government, you can be from the establishment. I mean, it is across the board. You can go on name calling and you can go on blaming each other, but the problems are there as they are, and nobody has addressed them.
And unfortunately, these problems will increase in the coming months.
Yeah.
And this year, 2022, is not going to be an easy year for the people of Pakistan, sir, because some strict measures, if they are taken, for example, you earlier talked about two major aspects. One is the increase in the petroleum prices. This is the first jump that we have seen. It is going to go up further. So is the case with the tariff.
So the Imran Khan government, PTI government, started gaining macroeconomic stability. As soon as they did, they focused on trying to grow. I mean, the minister tried to
focus on the growth-oriented policy.
So what was the growth-oriented? By giving incentives to various sectors like the industry, the exports, the textiles, the construction industry. And suddenly we saw that everything started spiraling out. So we are
even during the corona
that
time.
We want to increase our exports, but our exports are dependent on our imports. We are an import-led, export-oriented economy, and we are a consumption-driven economy where the growth is from consumption. So this is the challenge. So we have to really modify this structure, and that is the
let's hear what Dr. Khaqan Najeeb Saab has to share now. Dr. Saab, you heard what Dr. Shimail just talked about, and a very, I would say, serious situation is developing or has already developed. And it seems that the coming months are going to be pretty tough. The real challenge for the current government is not going to be about the political instability. I guess this is going to be about the budget document. Dr. Saab, your take.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Faisal, always a pleasure to be on your program. Whenever I've been on your program, I've always talked of fundamental issues of Pakistan. I've always talked about how fundamentals need to be corrected. I've always talked about the structural issues that need to be corrected. But unfortunately, today, that is not the time. Today is the time to deal with today. Today is the time to deal with the immediate. And what is the immediate? You have $10 billion in your kitty. You are running a new subsidy of $143 billion in June. So if you project it, that's an untenable position. You are running a trade deficit of about $40 billion dollars in the first 10 months. And you are also running an inflation of 13.4% in April, which is going to come higher than 14% in May. So it's a very difficult time. So first of all, the government should present to the country, to the multilateral friends, to the bilateral friends, what is their program to tackle all these issues that have been put in front of you. This is very important, and this is a different balance of payments crisis, because this time we have a charged political atmosphere. We have a commodity price hike that is taking place all over the world. oil is at $123 a barrel today. We have a
Yeah.
time period uncertainty of how long this government is going to be in power. And lastly, the complexity of issues and then a lack of a homegrown program is making everyone jittery, whether that's the domestic markets or the international markets. For example, Pakistan took one right step where you increased 30 rupees, and you could see that the stock exchange downward slide has slowed or has been arrested, and the rupee has actually come back a little bit as well. Now, what the government really needs to put forward is its own plan. This whole reliance on IMF is all right, and we do need to go to the fund, but we need to go to the fund with our homegrown plan. What is our homegrown plan, and what are we asking the government to do? We are asking them to tell us how the petroleum, how the energy subsidies, which are currently 143 billion a month, are going to subside, and how are we going to move to a targeted subsidy regime. Just the income support program targets are not enough. How are we going to tackle the motorbikes, the transport, the public transport, the agriculture tube wells, as well as the agriculture tractor people? So how are we going to do that? Secondly, what we are looking for from the government is the contours of a budget. Where is the budget strategy paper? We should by now have had a budget strategy paper which outlines the contours of the next budget so that everyone
Absolutely.
should have clarity on that. Then we are looking for an inflation plan. The monetary tightening is one aspect, which the state bank is, of course, doing. But this is not going to be enough where the inflation is largely cost push. So where is our plan on that? And there can be a plan. And it's not about administrative measures. It's about how the agriculture supplies are going to be met. How are we going to create more marketization? How are we going to make sure that there is a supply chain that is not broken? And lastly, on the IMF also, where is our plan? We went to the fund, had discussions in the US as well as in Doha, without taking the clear stand on the energy pricing subsidies. So now we came back and took a knee-jerk reaction and increased it by 30 rupees. I think what we should have done is given a clear picture what are going to be the changes, and we should have been inking a deal rather than delaying a deal. All the contours of the budget, whether that's the expenditure side, whether that's the targeted subsidy side, whether that's going to be the fiscal overall consolidation. And if we are talking about this 4-5% that the government is presenting, I don't think that is doable. Any fiscal which is running at 8 to 9% mathematically cannot come down to 4 to 5%. So a 6 to 7% target next year, or around 6 at least next year, is that we should be thinking. We should also be clear on what kind of new taxation do we want to put on the table. The PIT, the personal income tax regime, the SROs that have to go, the exemptions. So all this, as soon as the government gives clarity on this to all the markets, we would be much better off. Today
Because
is the
currently,
time to do that.
Dr. Najeeb, what I have found is that this uncertainty is the real problem at the moment, because we are not sure what to do, what not to do. Because these are the times, whether to invest in the stock market or not to invest, whether to do saving, and then you're looking at the current inflation, and otherwise savings definitely are reduced. And the prices that are going to go up, two major components really, are causing that inflation perhaps: your fuel prices and your tariff. Now, sir, we have learned that the fuel prices will go further up in the coming months. So the case is with the interest rate that is also going to go up to counter your inflation aspect. The borrowing to the private sector is going to be reduced. So forget about the growth, to be very honest. Only thing is about the survival. Now, when you talk that the budget deficit target is kept at 4.8% of the GDP, sir, that's not a joke. So I mean, these are literally tough times. I mean, Dr. Saab earlier, before the start of the program, was saying that, we should have something like charter of economy, like most of these political parties end up having charter of democracy, and perhaps for their own favor. But this time, something really needs to be done for the people of Pakistan, sir. And whether 22 crore or 24 or 26, Zardari Sahab says we are almost 30 crore. So I was just doing the basic math, and I found out that according to Zardari Sahab, our per capita income is around $1,000 then. You know, so I'm totally confused, Dr. Sahab, what to follow, what not to follow, what is the exact number. Because when we say that 65% of the total population of Pakistan, to be exact 67% of the total population is well under the age of 35. These are the people who will get married and have children, right? So you are looking at something like the baby boomer concept, which developed in the early 50s after the Second World War. So what I'm saying is that if you look at the right number of population, for example, let's suppose it's 26, sir, things are not that great. We have no plan how many universities to make, how many schools to make.
Taking a cue from what Dr. was saying, I think the issue is very clear that the markets have responded as soon as there was some semblance of direction from IMF. So if the technical team of the government's finance and the economic team, if they come up with a plan, as Dr. was rightly, I think he had more coherent numbers and documented what should be done. So the government really needs to come up with a plan how with these we already know what the problems are, and the problems are there. So the firefighting right away. So for example, the government tried to ban the luxury products. Yesterday I was part of a press conference with the private sector at the Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of people are not happy with this because from the looks of it, it looks that we will save, but the total amount of money that will be saved to the
1 billion
would be at the max 1 billion, but supposedly about 600 million to 950 million dollars. But you can say the impact of the complete supply chain is going to be manifold because it involves a lot of people's consumption. At the same time, businesses, retailers, etc., because they're living, their
so many things are
source of
associated
income
with it.
is related to that. So all of the people who are within that fold are going to be impacted. So a lot of people will become jobless or will be out of work or out of their revenues. So these are the sorts of problems. When the government comes under pressure, be it IMF or etc., why don't we do the necessary steps that are required to be done? So expenditures need to be cut across the board. It should not be only the expenditures are in the form of removal of subsidy, but why not all the perks, all the government footprint in terms of, let's talk about fuel. So the fuel consumption in hundreds of thousands of cars that are run by the government, and a lot of people enjoy those fuel consumption. Let's reduce those. So we need to really go across and
electricity, sir. You go to any ministry and you'll see all the lights, all the ACs, everything is on and nobody's sitting even there.
The point is we need to think out of the box. Again, it will be a meager amount, but we will have to add each and every
Sir, every drop matters now.
Every drop matters now, and we need to reduce our footprint and really, really look at how we can expand our revenues.
Dr. If you allow me, sir, we've been joined in by Shahbaz Rana Sahab, economic correspondent of Express Tribune. Rana Sahab, Assalamu alaikum.
Ji, walaikum assalam.
Good to have you in the show, sir. Rana Sahab, please educate us and our viewers also, sir, what's going on, because it seems that the economic crunch is something which everybody is feeling at the moment, sir. Forget about the government or the people, sir. Every single person is going to get affected now. And the months ahead maybe are tougher than what we are experiencing currently, sir. And especially when you look at the wheat prices, the fertilizer prices, the other imported products for that matter. So everything is going to go up. That gives a very, very interesting picture, sir. Your take.
Thank you, Faisal Rehman. Thank you very much for inviting me. Well, the situation is not good, as you have just explained, and things will be very critical in the months ahead. And the elephant in the room is the rupee devaluation and the lack of fiscal resources and the external resources. And we all know what are the problems and what are the implications. There is nothing new. The only question is when we realize these things. Unfortunately, my take is that there is still not a deep realization of the situation that we are facing and that we are going to face in coming months, as we have just mentioned. It is not just increasing the fuel prices by about 25%. The more is coming in shape of further reduction in fuel, particularly the energy subsidies. That means increase in the electricity prices. Then you will have to take other tough measures, including the increase in the tax rates and cutting the expenditures. But when it comes to reducing the expenditures, our policy priorities are not appropriate. We have been, despite all odds, despite we do not have any kind of fiscal space, we have been giving untargeted subsidies to the exporters, general subsidies on electricity, on gas. And we do not know how much of their production is being exported, or how much of it is being supplied to the domestic market by availing billions of rupees subsidies every year. But this has to be cut. And same is the case. The real problem, another is when it comes to the expenditures, is the interest payment, the cost of debt servicing. Not only the cost. We are not just making any repayments from the budget. So if you look at the number, the figure was just rupees 1.5 trillion hardly 4 years ago. And when the next budget will be presented on 10th of June, you may see the figure of the debt servicing cost may be ranging from rupees 3.6 trillion to rupees 3.8 trillion. Meaning thereby, if we collect this year, say rupees 6 trillion, how much of it comes around rupees 4 trillion or 3.8 trillion? You can imagine that. Rest of the money that we are left with will go to the defense expenditure. So this is the state of Pakistan's affairs right now. In these circumstances, every government tried to close its eyes. We have been writing for past 4 years that the economic conditions are not good. When we used to raise our voice, we were told, no, look, the current account deficit is a good current account deficit. Look, the number of the foreign exchange reserve has hit the roof. It's the $20 billion, the highest ever in the history of Pakistan. And we were reminding the rulers of that time, look, these numbers are not sustainable. Our foreign exchange reserves are built by taking loans. And when the time will come to pay back those loans, these reserves will gradually reduce. And that has exactly happened. And what is the result? The result is that the rupee right now is standing around rupees 200 to a dollar. Has any one of us imagined that this would happen when just in August last year, the then Governor State Bank of Pakistan and the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, they were congratulating the nation that, look, we have the highest ever reserves. These things were writing on the wall, and the people were not ready to read those lines. Now, the problem is that the thing that we have mentioned, the 10th June budget will be very difficult. The choice, for sure. The choice for the new government is that will it follow the kind of a its political ambitions, because it's a coalition government? Will it give a budget that it will try to appease almost every segment of the society, or it will take the corrective measures? And the corrective measures does not just mean increasing the fuel prices by another 25%, increasing your electricity tariffs, say, by 40%.
Another 25% on top of what we are paying currently, right?
Yes.
So you are talking about some very serious figures, sir. You're talking about another additional 55 rupees a litre, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know what happens exactly, but right now the subsidy amount, as we speak now, is around 25 rupees plus on petrol, and I'm talking about the new figure. If you look at the old number, it is rupees 17 on petrol and rupees 56 per litre subsidy on the high-speed diesel. Then we have this kind of what I call the landmine in shape of rupees 5 per unit electricity subsidy, which the former Prime Minister gave just before he knew that he is going to be ousted from the power. And that's a serious problem for the government. If it increases the electricity prices by rupees 5 per unit, in addition to that, it will also have to increase another rupees 3 almost per unit on account of annual base tariff adjustment from the month of July. Then on top of that, you have these monthly fuel price adjustments that are not coming less than rupees 5, rupees 4.80 paisa, roughly rupees 5 per unit. So things are very tight, and when your currency has just devalued to rupees 200, you will see its impact in shape of everything that we consume. The problem with Pakistan's economy...
Please go ahead, sir.
So the problem with Pakistan's economy is that its structure is flawed, and it is not it didn't happen just yesterday. It started happening in early 2000s when we went towards an import-led consumption model that we were not able to produce, but we were allowed to import goods from abroad. Right now, about 55% of your total imports are made of raw materials. Then another about 25-30% is intermediary goods. Effectively, 80% of your import bill is essential. You cannot cut it down. You have just seen that the government took certain measures. It decided to impose ban on hardly 41 items. And you know that the monthly impact of this is just $280 million to $300 million, neither here nor there. So this is a situation where we are standing, and the government had a hope that after increasing the fuel prices by about 25%, the IMF will give it next tranche, and there will be a staff level agreement. My fear is it is not coming.
Now, Rana Sahab, two statements issued by the Ministry of Finance, and I want you to comment on that also. They say that exchange rate depreciation, declining foreign exchange reserves, that is a big challenge. They further added that economic growth may not be sustainable given the macroeconomic imbalances. Further says, Pakistan caught in a vicious inflation, currency depreciation spiral. Now, your comments, sir, because when you just look at these three sentences, sir, it gives me goosebumps basically, sir.
It tells the story of Pakistan's economy, but my worry is that why the Ministry of Finance was silent 3-4 months back. When we were writing these things that we are heading to this crisis, now the Ministry of Finance is suddenly alive. We are not having independent opinion, independent kind of advice from the Ministry of Finance or either from the State Bank of Pakistan. The figures, the statement that you have just mentioned, it is alarming. I agree with you. We are in a very serious mess, and if the IMF program doesn't come this month, I hope it comes by 12th of June, as said by our Finance Minister, Mr. Shimail, that he would try to reach a deal with the IMF by 12th of this month. And if it does not come, we do not have money for our import for the month of July. And above all, if you don't have money, and right now, you have seen about ₹4 appreciation in the value of the rupee against the US dollar since May 26th, when the government decided to increase the prices. So this ₹4 appreciation of the value of the rupee is the result of that there was an element of speculation that has to an extent reduced. But is there a guarantee that the speculators will not again try to play with the value of currency, given the fact if there is any kind of delay in the IMF program? And when the rupee would come under pressure, the things that you have just mentioned, the problem, my apprehension is that the government may go for a popular budget. It may again try to appease the stock market brokers. It may try to appease the textile exporters because they provide huge money in terms of financing the election campaigns of all of the political parties of Pakistan. So have very deep stakes. The government may also try to appease the real estate sector. So in an environment of appeasing everybody, when you have elections around the corner, we do not know it will happen in December, in August, or in August next year. So in such situation, putting things on right track will be a big challenge. And above all,
Rana sir, one quick comment. Normally, sir, I'm sure you also know that the budget is, normally presented around 7th, 8th, or max before 10th of June. This year, as you said, the 10th of June. Now, sir, what about the economic survey? Because that document is always prepared way before that. What is the current situation, sir? Because we haven't heard anything yet. Are we totally waiting for this IMF deal to come up with the final figures, or perhaps something else is going on?
No, the numbers are quite evident. The economic survey of Pakistan may likely to be unveiled on 9th of June. If the budget is on 10th, it's just one day before. And the National Accounts Committee meeting has held rather early this month, and it has approved the provisional GDP growth number 6% for the outgoing fiscal year. And that number you would see in the economic survey of Pakistan, along with so many other things. But one should not be happy about 6% growth rate, because it was the result of the consumption and higher imports. If you just exclude one factor, like the government had targeted to restrict the imports to $55 billion this year. Now we are estimating to have around $75 billion of imports.
75.
So $75 billion imports. We are already touching around $65.5 billion imports with 2 months remaining in the closing of the fiscal year. So just the difference between $75 billion import and the target of $55 billion is 1% increase in the GDP growth rate. So should we celebrate the 6% growth rate, or should we have some kind of soul searching? Why? Because when the PMLN government achieved in 2018 the 6% economic growth rate, we were at the IMF doorstep. Again, the PTI government achieved 6% growth rate. After 4 years, we are again on the doorstep of the IMF. So this growth is funded by Mr. Harry, by Mr. William Words, whosoever. It is not funded, it is not financed by our domestic investments and savings. Someone else from abroad is funding this growth. It is not sustainable. We are taking debt to finance our growth. And that debt is provided by also someone from Pakistan and someone from abroad. We need to correct this. The world has achieved sustainable growth. You have in front of you the Asia Pacific countries, China, all of them, they first increase their exports. And what we are doing at the name of exports, we are financing and funding few wealthy, filthy rich families of Pakistan who are taking away every year rupees around 100 billion subsidies. And what they have given us in return of that, $3 billion max export in a month. And this is also the result of higher global commodity prices. As we see the impact of the commodity prices on our imports, this is the same story of the exports. If you exclude the impact of the higher commodity prices on the exports, our exports are still around $2.2 to $2.3 billion per month. This is the story of Pakistan. And with this around $25 billion to $30 billion per annum exports, we are going nowhere. We will be going again and again to the IMF, to the World Bank, to the Asian Development Bank, to China, to Saudi Arabia. So everything that we do is funded by someone else. So this is the story of Pakistan's economy.
Thank you very much for the info. Rana Saab, it was a pleasure talking to you and listening to you. Now, if this is the condition, sir, God bless us.
What basically I think we are all boiling down towards is that someone has to make the hard decisions. Either it's this government or the next.
Those hard decisions will be so politically incorrect that nobody wants to take those steps.
The problem that all of the experts that were here and were discussing, and the ones who are writing about it every day are saying that we are coming to that level where we don't have that maneuverability to either negotiate better deals. We have been locked down with the state bank with the last legislation. We cannot borrow from the state bank. We are borrowing commercially. We are borrowing internationally. We are going to the IMF. And so our bond, so we raised a lot of money from bonds as well, and that also is not getting the sort of rating that it was in the past. So all of these things.
I remember they used to be oversubscribed. There was a time.
So the government really has to cut down. So the immediate solution is to really cut down the losses. We have to really, other than interest payments, which obviously now we are liable to, and we will have to. We don't have a choice. So we have to do that. But other than that, whatever expenditures we have to cut down on non-essential expenditures across the board. It is not for me and you only. It is for the institutions. It is for the big boys, the small boys, the industrialists, everyone. Our luxuries that we enjoy today are at the expense of the dollar, that there is the trade deficit. So that trade deficit, so for example, if the economy has grown to 6% in terms of this last year, what that means is that the domestic commerce there is a demand. How much is it contributing towards the revenue generation? That is the
actual question.
The actual question. So who is going to bell this cat? Who is going to do it?
The government.
So the government has to, instead of trying to bluff the public in trying to make populist decisions, they need to really sit with the people, with the decision makers.
Dr. Saab, I totally agree with you. All these stakeholders need to be on the same page now.
We need to stop name calling and blaming each other and understand that this is an emergency. This is like as if your country has been attacked by a foreign,
God forbidden, but this is even worse than that.
So this is the sort of situation that requires everyone to be on the same table, make hard decisions, and do those belt tightening. This is no more about it.
Consistent policies, Dr. Saab, because that is what is the need of the hour. Now, let me have a word with Dr. Khaqan. Najeeb Saab, you heard what Shahbaz Rana said in detail. I mean, when you talk about the digits, the numbers, the kind of picture he has presented, sir, is something to worry about and really, really worry about. I've been doing programs on economy for the last maybe 22 years. But honestly speaking, sir, this is, I think, the worst time for Pakistan as far as the economy is concerned. Now, let's talk about the remedies, the solutions. At the end of the day, sir, this is our country. We have to fix things. Your take, sir, in this regard. I mean, immediately what needs to be done? As you said that, there has to be ad hoc based decisions. Some decisions will be politically very incorrect for the parties. Like, for example, the current government wasn't ready to increase the prices because, for example, if the elections are held and if this is the condition, then everybody's going to blame them. So, how to move forward now, sir? Dr. Saab says that, we are stuck. The maneuverability is limited now.
So Faisal, that's true. The maneuverability is limited, and that's where I think let's put something that the nation can do. I think from this platform, let's make an appeal to the 220 million people of Pakistan that you need to conserve energy. If you are using 2 air conditioners, use 1. If you're using 4 fans in the house, use 3. If you're going out on Sunday, don't go out on Sunday. Have a car-free Sunday. If you can do some work going out once, try and delay it. Move to necessities, move to savings. The whole world has moved to a program of conservation. The US has launched a huge conservation program. UAE, which is an oil exporting nation, has moved to 4 to 5 days working week, work from home. So as a nation, just forgetting what the government is doing, take a leap of faith and believe that every energy saved in electricity, petrol, diesel, or gas is dollars saved, because 50 to 60% of our production is coming by spending these dollars. So I really appeal to the people of Pakistan and all of us to take the step of saving energy, and can make a lot of difference. The government should come up with a conservation plan. Go to 4 to 5 working days, make Sundays car free, do carpooling, make public transport more fuel efficient, get rid of the old buses, make the public transport come onto the highways free of cost, remove the toll on them. Go and do the measures that you can do on energy conservation, energy rationing.
I mean, obviously,
Yes.
when I see that one driver in a car is going to pick up a child from school or drop a child at school for that matter, so why can't we have proper transport system? The schools, I mean, all these private schools, they're minting money left, right and center, sir. The amount of money they charge, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, these should be the responsibilities of the schools also. That instead of having 50 cars for 50 students, why not to have a bus for 50 students? Things like that. I mean, and this has to be done on an emergency basis, sir. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
Enjoy it and have it.
Absolutely. So, and then the government, so if we take responsibility, the government must follow with a conservation and rationing strategy. There is no other strategy to hit immediately the kind of dollars that you're spending to buy LNG that is at $23 and selling to the exporters at $6.50.
Today, the price of LNG has been increased again, by the way, 15 or 16 rupees a kilo maybe.
So the government needs to take conservation steps with the people that we've talked about. Secondly, the government needs to be drastically putting new taxation on the well-off. For example, all the 1700 billion in exemptions that lie in our last economic survey, we need to seriously think about. Forget the fund for a while and do the right things that you need to do. Agriculture taxation, non-existent. Real estate
Non-existent.
taxation,
Retail,
non-existent.
wholesale, you
Retail,
name it.
so the government really needs to have a decisive view on that. Then some kind of levy on the rich. Then we need to do a personal income tax review. I keep saying this. The highest marginal tax rate in Pakistan is hit at 75 million rupees. A guy or a lady earning 7.5 crore rupees. Who earns 7.5? Bring that threshold down to 2 crore rupees and hit him or her with that. Go on to an inheritance tax. If you got rid of the wealth tax, get rid of the put an inheritance tax in Pakistan. So take these kind of measures on the expenditure side.
Should be taken, Dr. Najeeb, otherwise there is no solution.
Yeah,
So last
but
1 minute, Dr. Saab.
Yeah.
So
Please
just
go ahead.
last thing, Faisal. On the expenditure side, you must put the pension reforms on the table so that the people really believe that you've taken the steps. You must also get away from untargeted subsidies and grants that you're giving, and especially to the SOEs, and tell them to tighten their belts. Thank you.
All right.
So because Dr. was talking about efficiency, so we are wasting a lot of fuel in inefficient cars. We see all the gas guzzling and all the smoke. We need to either shut them down or improvise them. It can be done very rapidly.
Oh yes, oh yes.
And we need to go for rationing. I mean, there are a lot of countries around the world that have days where you have number plates that you're allowed to drive on certain days and you're not allowed to drive on certain days. So these are the sorts of immediate measures. And as I said, the institutions need to get rid of all the luxuries. No more luxuries. We need to really cut down all of that. So all of this can have a huge impact. I think we can really go in saving. And I must say, buy Pakistani, and we must start discouraging as a nation that we should buy any product, anything that is manufactured in Pakistan. Plus, we need to bring all the retailers from the chambers and commerce and everything. We're going to sit on the table and bring them either into terms of fixed tax or some sort of regime where we bring in our tax revenues.
I totally agree. I mean, we always end up blaming the governments, XYZ government or whatever.
We need to do our bit now.
Exactly. So this is the time when the nation has to realize that, you know, this is where, you know, normally I still remember Bhutto Sahab saying that, you know, we'll eat grass, but we'll make the atomic bomb, sir. We eventually did it because there was a will, and we did it against all odds. And now this is time that economic revival.
Faisal, through your program, we talk about ghairat and all these, you know.
This is the time to show it.
Let's show ghairat by, you know, giving our taxes, doing our share, doing our bit, conserving energy,
because
saving for our nation.
Sir, I totally agree with you on that front, Dr. Saab. This is a very, very tough situation, but inshallah ta'ala, provided we take the right decisions at the right time in the right direction, things will be, inshallah, okay. But few years will be pretty tough. Thank you very much, Dr. Shimail. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan, and also I would like to thank Shahbaz Rana Saab for his input. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.